Hi, welcome to the LexCode channel where we learn to code together. This video is a part of a series called Learn C# for Game Development, where we learn the basics of this programming language needed to later learn game development with Unity. Today we're going to be talking about variables, the very basics of the language, so let's dive right into it. And before we start, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment. This will help me a lot with the algorithm, so thank you very much in advance. Let's begin. Then let's talk about variables. So think of a variable as a box. This is the basic building block of programming. It allows us to store and manipulate data when we are writing our programs. So imagine a box, and this box can store some particular value. On the screen, you can see some examples of the values we can store in our variables. We can store, let's say, a name, Bob. We can store a Boolean value, so it's true or false. Or we can store, say, a number, 35. When creating a variable in C#, we need to specify its type. Basically, we have to tell the computer what type of value will our variable store. The main types that we have in C# are int or integer, float, string, and bool or boolean. Let's take a look at some examples of these values. So int is a whole number, basically 32, 64, 25, etc., etc. So any whole number. A float is a number with floating point, so values like 45.12, 43.13, and so on and so forth. There are also doubles, but floats are used more often, and I don't think you really need to bother with the difference between those two at this point. There are also strings. Strings are any text put in the quotes. Here it's also worth mentioning that it can be literally any text, even numbers inside the quotes will be considered a string and not an integer or float. And there is a boolean. Boolean value can only be true or false and is used to check for certain conditions in our programs. These are the main types of variables in C#. Let's take a look at how to actually declare or create a variable. In order to do that, we need to specify its type, give it a descriptive name, and then assign it a value using the equals operator. In this screen, you can see that we have the type int, we have the name apples, and then we assign the value of 10 to that variable. So we have 10 apples. Another way that you can do that is you can first declare a variable. You can say first type and name, and then you can assign it a value later in your code. So you can create a variable, say int apples, and then later you can assign it a value of 10 or any other value that you want. Instead of specifying the type, we can also use the var keyword, which basically means that C# will figure out the correct type for your variable on its own. Usually it's used when you don't know that the type of value that your variable is going to store, or if you're just feeling lazy about specifying types. But otherwise, it's a good practice to always specify the types of your variables. Now, let's move into Visual Studio and write some code to practice variables. All right, so I'm going to move from my presentation to Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new project. It's going to be a console application, and I'm going to call it variables. Let's click next and create. Let's wait for Visual Studio to load the project, and there we go. All right. So we don't need this console write line statement. Let's clear it. And let's start writing some code. We're going to write a program that's going to greet our user. It's going to prompt the user for some information and then output the whole information about our user. So we will practice all kinds of variable types. We will practice variables and also reading input from user. Let's start. let's start with writing a statement. And by the way, you can write console write line like this, or you can also just put CW and then press tab, and it's going to generate the code for you. So you can start typing here. So let's say console write line. And first question that we're going to ask our user is going to be, what is your name? We want to know the name of our user first. What is your name? And now we need the user to answer. We need to read their response. So we're going to say string name. And let's actually start by giving a predefined name. So let's give the name Alex. And now we want to say, hello, Alex, right? So we're going to say console write line, and we're going to put a string here and say, hello, Alex, or should we say hello name? Well, that's just going to print hello name, right? So we need some way to put a variable in our string. And the way we do that is we put a string like this, and then we put a plus sign, and we put our variable outside of the brackets. So we specify for the editor, for the language, that this is a variable. This is not name. This is not the word name that we want to print. This is the variable, the contents of which we want to print. This is a basic way to do that. There is also another way, which I'm going to show you after we run this program, and we're going to write with this way after that because I just prefer that. So let's run a program. Let's see what it says. Let's wait for the build to compile. And there you go. It asks us what is your name, and it says hello, Alex. Now another way that we can print that is we can say hello, and if we put this $sign here before the string, we're going to let C# know that this is a formatted string, which means that we can put variables inside this string. And the way we do that is we put the brackets here, and then we just put the name of our variable here. So the result is going to be the same. It's going to again print Alex. But this is not interesting, right? So we have the predefined name, but it's always going to print hello Alex, right? If our user's name is different, it's gonna be simply wrong. So the way we want to change our program is we don't want to give it a predefined string. We want to say console read line. And this command allows us to read the input from a user. So basically, after saying what is your name, we're going to let user input something, print something, and then based on that input, we're going to assign whatever user printed here to a variable name, and then we're going to print its contents. So let's take a look at how it works. And it's going to ask us what is your name, and now it's waiting for us to answer. So let's say Alex. Hit enter, and then it says hello Alex. Okay, so now we can print our name. We have our string here, but let's expand our program to use more types of variables. So we have our name. What else do we want to know about our user? Well, let's say we want to know about their age. So let's first start with typing a prompt. So we're going to ask, how old are you? And then once again, we're going to say, we're going to create a variable. And in this case, it's going to be an integer, so a whole number. For age, we can use a whole number. And it's going to be int age equals console.readLine. But here we can see that something is wrong. So let's see what the compiler, what the IDE tells us. It says cannot implicitly convert type string to int. What does it mean? It means that the only type of input that this command accepts from user is a string. But here we're trying to assign a string to an integer, which simply doesn't work. We cannot assign one type to another because we implicitly say that here we want an integer. So how can we fix that? Let's take a look at what does the IDE offers. We can convert to top level statement, but this is not exactly what we want to do. Well, it doesn't really offer anything good here, so let's just say int dot parse, and then we are going to parse the result of console readline. This command basically allows us to turn anything inside the parentheses into an integer. So that's how we can read any input from a user that is an integer that we want to be an integer, and that's how we convert it from a string. So let's update our final statement now. We say hello, name, your age is, and now we can put our next variable, which is going to be age, integer. Let's take a look what is going to happen now. What is your name? Alex. How old are you? 25. And now it says, hello, Alex, your age is 25. Let's close that. So I think you're starting to get it, right? Let's declare some more variables of different types. So now let's say we want to know a height of our user. And so let's once again say console.writeLine. We're going to prompt, how tall are you? And in this case, we don't want an integer really, because we can get an integer, but say we want to be really precise. So in this case, we want a float. So we want the user to specify their full centimeters and then point something. So let's say float height. And it's going to be, well, in this case, not int parse, but we're going to say double parse, right? Because we're going to say float parse. We're going to say float parse, and we're going to once again read the input from our user. So now let's take a look. Oops, I forgot to put it in our final line. You are, and then let's say height, centimeters, tall. Right, let's see if that works the way we intended. Alex, 25, let's say 172.25. Hello, Alex, your age is 25, you are 172.25 centimeters tall. Okay, cool, let's keep going. What other types of variables we can declare? So let's remember, we had string, integers, floats, and the last one, the last basic type that we talked about was a Boolean, right? So this is going to be a true or false. So let's try and ask something that would fit that. Console WriteLine. Are you doing good? And then let's say we want a Boolean. It's fine. Now let's just set it to true. Let's not read this input. For now, let's just see you are fine. And then we're going to output the result of is fine. Let's just say that. So let's take a look. What is your name? Alex, 25, 172.25. Are you doing good? Hello, Alex. Your age is 25. You are 172, blah, 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 tall. You are fine. True. If we put false here, this is going to say you are fine. So let's just put whatever. Oops. I think I broke the program. I did. Okay. Let's not rush this and just put whatever. You are fine. And in this case, it says false. So it can be either true or false. That is it. So these are variables in C#, containers for values. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment under the video. Let me know if you have any questions left or if you have any suggestions for the upcoming videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.